The best work I do for free. God pays my bills, but the best work I do for free. Marsha Stafford from New You Recovery and the Been There, Done That radio show joins us to tell her story. As a toddler, she was given alcohol for family entertainment. She and her siblings are breaking the chains of hereditary alcoholism and creating familial sobriety. She is a consultant for new treatment centers and helps them open across the country. Enjoy. Welcome to the Illuminate Recovery podcast. We shed light on mental health issues, mental illness, and addiction recovery, ways to cope, manage, and inspire. Beyond the self-care we will discuss, you may need the help of a licensed professional. My name's Kurt Nider. I'm a husband, a father, entrepreneur, a handyman, and a student of life. I avoid conflict, I deflect with humor, and I'm fascinated by the human experience.
And I'm Shelley Mangum. I am a clinical mental health counselor, and my favorite role of all times is grandma. I am a seeker of truth, and I feel like life should be approached with tremendous curiosity.
I ask the dumb questions.
I fill in the gaps. Today, we are so privileged and excited to have Marsha Stafford with us. She has been in the recovery industry a long time. She offers an awful lot of consulting and helping facilities that are doing substance abuse treatment get off the ground and really make a change. And so, Marsha, thanks for being with us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's my joy to be able to talk with you guys today. And just thank you for the invitation. It's an honor.
Oh, awesome. So let me just start out by, I don't know that I've ever heard your recovery story, and I'm sure that you've got an amazing one to tell. So maybe just start off by giving us a little bit of background about kind of where you come from and help us move into some understanding of your background and what kind of led you to where you're at today.
Right. Well, that's an awful big question for a gal that's 62, because my story started, at a very early age, and so I'll keep it brief and to the point. We'll see what story comes out of me today. You know what I mean? Because depending on where I'm at and the knowledge that I have, then sometimes the story gets edited as you pick up new information. But my story is that I was born an alcoholic. I was raised by alcoholics, and on March 11th of 2000, I made a commitment to myself that I did not want to die an alcoholic. And in our family, at the time that I got sober, that was the storyline that happened for most individuals in my immediate family. I say science hasn't caught up with me yet that you can be born an alcoholic, but I think someday it will. There's definitely a biological link to it, and I had alcoholism on both sides of my family, and my mom and my dad. I am a Irish, German, Cherokee, and those three populations have a tendency to have increased rates of alcoholism based on cultural and biological evidence. So I like to think I was the baseball had been pitched at me long before I got to the plate.
You didn't feel like you didn't have much of a chance.
No. I hit a home run, and being raised by individuals who are alcoholics is an interesting lifestyle, because my parents didn't know that they had alcoholism. So, my parents were born, my mom was 1931, my dad was probably 33. And so by the time they were growing up and they were raising a family, we weren't talking about alcoholism as a thing in the family. There were people who were still heavy drinkers, moderate drinkers, people that didn't drink a lot. But in my family, we drank a lot. And I used to joke about, when my dad would lose his job, which he would do frequently because of his alcoholism, then he would come home and he would say, hey sis, and he would be talking to my mom. I lost my job today. Here's my paycheck. And my mom would say, well, let's go to the liquor store and we'll figure this out. So alcohol, or the use of alcohol in my family at a very young age, I got to see that my parents used alcohol in order to help problem solve in their life. It was the elixir. It was what made everything okay. They didn't believe that alcohol was part of their problem. And so as kids, my brother and my sister and I, there were 4 brothers and 1 sister. And we would be given alcohol as kids to have a drink. My dad would leave a beer can on the ground, and I'd run over and I'd pick it up, and I can remember being 3 or 4 and just guzzling it. And so I remember that nice tingly feeling that came over me as a kid. And I would dance around the room, and people would laugh at me. Oh, look at her, isn't she funny? And I would fall over. But, it doesn't take much for a toddler to get drunk.
Right.
And so, drinking for me, people would laugh and joke. And when I was a toddler, of course, when you're 35, 40 years old, in a bar dancing on a table because you're drunk, people aren't laughing so much anymore. So, alcohol took a turn in my life. So I was raised alcoholic. It was I didn't know how not to drink. And so that was kind of how I was raised. And alcohol was my friend. I remember being in high school, and after a softball game, I would say, hey, do you guys want to go get drunk? And I've always been a leader in my group. And they'd say, well, what do you mean? We don't have any alcohol. And I'd say, well, I'll show you. I'll show you how to get some alcohol. And then I'd tell them, let's pull our money together. And then I would go to the liquor store here, and I'm in Albuquerque today. And I would say, all we got to do is ask somebody going in to buy us some alcohol. And it always worked. I was not surprised, because I had done it before on my own with my little brother, that people at the liquor store would buy alcohol for us. And we would ask them to buy bottles of Annie Green Springs, Easy Days, or Country Night, or they had a bunch of different flavors. And I'd come back successful with a couple of bottles. And of course, I was validated as a teenager. Oh, look, she can get alcohol for us. So, and then I can remember sitting on the softball field in a circle with 7 or 8 gals that, I played softball with. And we'd have these bottles of Annie Green Springs wine. And we'd open them and pass one around. And people take a little drink and laugh and pass it on. But when the bottle came to me, I can remember wanting to hold on to it. I would take 2 or 3 swigs, and I didn't want to pass it on. Or I was watching other people drink little sips, and I'm like, oh, good, they're saving more for me. So it was always about I, me, more. And, I was just a teenager. So the biological part of alcoholism kicked in for me really young. My little brother, I had to take a breath for a minute, because, my little brother is the one that I'm here in Albuquerque for, because he passed away on the 23rd. And he was an alcoholic by the time he was probably about 11 years old. And so it's difficult to see people as young as that develop alcoholism very, very young. And some people would say, oh, that can't happen, but it does. And, he struggled with alcoholism all of his life. Except, he did die sober. He was sober 3 years before he passed away. And, that's a miracle in my family.
That's huge.
So, yeah, it was a big deal. And in my family, that's just how you lived. Alcohol was something we always did. When somebody died, you drank more. You got to celebrate that they're not here anymore. So we always celebrate when somebody has passed on because we think that this is our hell and that somebody that is passed on. And so we celebrate their life with drinking. And so my sobriety date, is March 11th of 2000. So I'm 21 years sober. And in the last 21 years, I've learned to celebrate life for somebody when they've passed without using alcohol or drugs in order to do that. And what a difference that has made in my life. Oh, my God. Particularly with the passing of my brother, I told you in the beginning that my life and my siblings have 4 brothers and 1 sister, and this disease, didn't skip a beat in our family. And I think a large part of it had to do with our setting, our environment, was that alcohol was accepted. We were given alcohol as kids. So, when you're in high school or college or whatever, and people say, hey, let's go drink, it's a normal and natural thing. We don't say no. We say yes. And so I think that had a really big part to play in everyone in my family developing alcoholism. And it played out different for each one of the members of my family. I have an older brother. He's 71 today. And his alcoholism and drug addiction would take a turn with the criminal life. He liked drugs and alcohol, but he also liked criminality. And so he would spend from the time he was 13 until he was 65 in custody in one way, shape, or form throughout his lifetime. And, he taught me a lesson that we can be addicted to other things like criminal behavior. Addiction is it's a wild, wild beast. And so my oldest brother spent most of his life in prison. And he got sober in prison. My brother today is 25 years sober. And I never thought I'd see that. That's a miracle in our family. My sister Debbie, she's the second to the oldest. She's only been sober for 19 months. And she's 66 years old. My brother Bruce is 64 years old, and he got sober probably 8 years ago. My brother Verlin, he's a year older than me. He would have been 63, but on his 48th birthday, he celebrated. He got left the bar drunk, driving, and he ran a stoplight and headed on into another vehicle, and he was killed instantly. And luckily, nobody else was harmed in that accident. And then, of course, I got sober, and then my little brother got sober 3 years ago when he was diagnosed with throat cancer. And my mom, she's 90 today, she got sober along with my little brother 3 years ago. So the miracle in our family is everybody is clean and sober. And that is a miracle.
Wow, Marsha, that's incredible, because I mean, I'm listening to you talk about a family culture, that alcohol was just part of that family culture, and you guys, probably for years never recognized that there was a different way of being. That was just what you were introduced to, and that was your life. And so I am curious. And it took the life of 2 of your brothers, I think we could safely say. Would you agree with that? Yeah.
Most definitely. Because drinking and smoking goes along hand in hand. And of course, my dad was alcoholic. He died of emphysema, and my little brother had emphysema, and of course, he got the lung cancer. So drinking and other diseases in our family, my dad died of emphysema, and my little brother died of lung cancer, but he had emphysema as well. So drinking and smoking went hand in hand. So we're kind of like a salty pirate family.
Well, Marsha,
Cussing.
yeah. So talk about how you come from that culture and decide that sobriety is something that you want to pursue. What made that difference for you?
Well, I would marry an alcoholic. I was made a ward of the court when I was 13 here in Albuquerque, and my parents became neglectful. The alcohol was more important to them than their kids. And unfortunately, my mom abandoned me here in Albuquerque. Well, the truth is I told her I wasn't going with her anymore. We were a gypsy family. My dad was a surveyor. He put in highways close to Route 66. And so we traveled a lot. And my mom was packing up the car one more time. And I said, I am not going with you. And she said, okay. And she left me here. And so I went over to my boyfriend's house that I knew from school, and I told him and his parents, I said, my mom left me here in Albuquerque. And they said, well, you'll be staying with us then. And they were a wonderful, wonderful family. They were military people, and I thought these people really know. They drank, both of them drank, but they were what I considered military drunks. And military drunks are different than the gypsy people that we were. They had a house, they had cars, they put their kids in school, they bought them school clothes. These are things that we didn't have. And so I thought, these people know how to drink. And so I was so glad that they brought me into their family. And of course, I had my boyfriend right there. I thought, this is convenient. And so they filed charges against my parents. My parents never showed up to their court date. And so I was made a ward of the court. And my boyfriend's parents they decided to be my foster parents. So they raised me after I became a ward of the court. And I thought, man, this is wonderful. Now, they allowed their kids to drink as well. He was a colonel in the Army. They had lived in Europe. And so their upbringing with their kids, even though they were from Salt Lake City, Utah, and were raised in that culture, because his dad was a colonel in the Army and they raised their kids up in Europe, they learned that, well, you can have wine and give it to your kids when they're kids. So that's what their path was. So they would still give us alcohol in their home, and it just continued to validate that alcohol is what makes things move. Part of their family. So I didn't have anything different to kind of balance it with. So I would be raised up in that family. My boyfriend Denton would become my husband, and we would move to Salt Lake City to take care of his dad. At the time that I met his family, his dad was paralyzed from the neck down. He had been injured in Swabisburg, Germany, in a car accident, and so he was paralyzed. So we moved to Salt Lake City to take care of him. And when we got to Salt Lake City, his dad said, if you're going to live in my house, you have to be married. So my husband and I went to Elko, Nevada, with his grandmother to get married. And so my husband's family is my family. And we would, my husband Denton, at the time, would be what you considered, we were functional. We were in our early 20s when we moved to Salt Lake, and we got jobs, we had good jobs, and, we drank recreationally. Whereas later on, that would progress. I learned that this disease is progressive because of my own experience. I wanted more over a period of time, and we started switching from alcohol, beer, that kind of thing, to hard alcohol. And boy, when I found hard alcohol, I was like, the Cherokee Indian in me went crazy. And talk about, I was like the book in Alcoholics Anonymous talks about Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. And my experience was when I drank whiskey, I became a wild Indian. Literally, I was not, I was more like a wild woman. And I have a tendency to, I tell people I was born with a megaphone in my mouth, and I have a loud voice anyhow. And when I drink whiskey or Captain Morgan spiced rum or tequila or anything like that, it has a chemical reaction inside of me that causes me to become a whole nother wild person. And I would dance on tables, or I was that person that people would ask to leave parties because I was really too loud and obnoxious. And I could drink a lot. So I would do competitive drinking with my husband or with other people. And so my alcoholism was progressing. My husband was drinking with me, and because his parents also have alcoholism, it just looks different from a military perspective. In the military, it's okay to drink too much. And so culturally there, it's okay to do that, except for the women. The women are not, were not at that point in time to look more like the men while they were drinking. So they would go to the country club and drink. And it was interesting to see, in hindsight, when I got sober and looked back at all that, how culturally things were driven and caused me to behave in certain ways based on the set and setting I was in. Fast forward, my husband and I would, drink throughout our life, and the alcoholism progressed. We were functional, and then at 37, I remember crossing a line. We were using marijuana. We started using cocaine, and with cocaine, I could drink more. Oh my gosh, that was wonderful. And so we were becoming, involved in drugs. And I worked in the hospitality industry. I worked for Holiday Inn, and I was their food and beverage director. And as a result of that, I could drink with customers in the bar. It was required. In the hospitality field, alcohol flows quite freely. So I only worked at places where alcohol was part of my job. And so it really did help to progress my alcoholism. And so I was working in the field. I was living in an environment where it was rich to drink. I was adding cocaine with it so I could drink more. And the nail in my coffin, I didn't get sober till I was 41. And of course, my husband is drinking and using along with me. We were quite successful at our drinking. And, what I learned is, and until I had consequences that caused me to look at my drinking, I would have kept going. I'm sure of it, Shelley. I would have kept going until I died, which is what a lot of alcoholics in our family do. Mm-hmm. That somehow fly under the radar low enough that you're not getting caught criminally. We, for whatever reason, never got DUIs, yet we drank and we drove all the time. We never got caught with our drugs, even though we had drugs on us, cocaine or marijuana. And so it was by the grace of God that for whatever reason we didn't get caught. I was never a bar fly, so I didn't go drink in bars other than when I was working with Holiday Inn. So when I was off of work, I just drank at home. So that kept us isolated from problems that way. But the alcoholism progressed, and We had several deaths, and my dad died. My foster dad died. My foster mom died. All of them died of alcoholism or problems as related to alcohol. My dad has emphysema. My mother-in-law, her esophagus exploded because she had cirrhosis of the liver, and she bled to death. Her heart finally gave out. And dad, my foster dad, would die of pneumonia. And so, those are horrid kinds of ways to die. It's just horrible. So upon those deaths, of course, it gave me, you would drink if you had that kind of sorrow in your life as well. Mm-hmm. And again, alcohol was part of the getting over somebody dying was, you just drank about it. And so alcohol, enough grief and not enough recovery or understanding how to grieve and deal with death. I'm in my late 30s, and I found methamphetamine. And when I was about 38 years old, my husband and I started using methamphetamine. And of course, I could not drink alcohol and use methamphetamines. It's like an oxymoron. Speed and alcohol don't work well with me. So I stopped drinking altogether, and I just used methamphetamine, and my husband did the same. And as a result of switching drugs, we lost everything in our life. We became meth heads. We lost the home that we had. We lost our jobs. My husband had had his job for well over 20 years. I had worked at Holiday Inn for at least 15, 16 years. And we lost everything. And we became homeless. We were living in a tent in a field. And we didn't, again, think that the alcohol or that the drugs were the problem. They were our solution. And we started acting out criminally. We couldn't pay for our insurance on our car. I'd get speeding tickets. And we were living in a tent in a field. But I got a job at Microsoft. And you get a job to keep the bartender paid or keep the dope dealer paid. So we got jobs again, and but we were living in a tent in the field. The deal was to not let anybody know that your butt's falling off. And so I would go to my nice job at Microsoft. My husband would go to his job out at the airport panel prints, I think it was called. And we would come home every night and go to the dope dealer, and then we would go to our tent, and we'd get high, and then we'd get up and do that all over again. And one day, my husband, we had one little car. It was called the Whisper 2000, and we had two dogs. And we never had pets. I was unable to, and it was probably good because I know that I would take them through this whole event of drinking and using with us. And so I'm thankful that never happened, but my dog suffered as a result of my using and drinking. And I would keep them in my car all day while I worked, and then we'd take them out to the tent. And we lived in that tent. It was out by the petroleum tank in North Salt Lake, where those the petroleum tanks are. There's a nice field out there. And we lived there from October until, probably December. So for 2 months we lived out there. My husband was driving to work one day. I was already at work, and he was driving to work. He had the dogs in the car. And he had dropped me off. He had dropped me off at work. He had the dogs in the car, and he was going to his work. And he got pulled over for not having a headlight on. And our car wasn't registered. We had warrants for our arrest. And he was arrested that day and taken to jail. And his boss out at Panel Prince called my work and said, your husband's been arrested and the dogs have been put into the dog pound. And as it would play out, I got the car back. He left it at the place that he worked. Well, I got the car, but as it would be, I decided I was done. That he was in jail, the dogs were in the pound, and I was free. and I was going to leave everybody behind. I was depressed. I didn't know it. Drugs were my only solution, and I decided I was going to drive to California. The story doesn't need to make sense. It's just what happened. You know what I mean?
This is fascinating, Marsha, and I would interrupt with questions, but I want to hear the rest of the story, so keep going.
So I picked up my stuff that I had. I threw it in the car, and I said, I'm going to California. I'm going to start a new life. I was driving. I was out by Tooele, and I look in the rearview mirror, and here's the cop lights, and I go, oh, crap. So I get pulled over, and cop says, didn't you have your driver's license and registration? And I said, I don't have either one of those. Why are you pulling me over? And he said, you were going 55 miles an hour when you should have been going 75. Oh, that's a problem. And then he ran my name, and he found I had a warrant in Davis County. So he picked me up. He took me to Tooele. And so now both my husband and I are in jail, the dogs are in the dog pound. And I got transferred out to Davis County. I spent a couple nights in Tooele. And I got taken to Davis County. And I'm sitting in the waiting room in Davis County. And who walked in the front door but my husband? They had transferred him out there. And I'm like, what are you doing here? And he's like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, well, I guess God's got another plan for us. And we would be, that would be part of our saving grace, is we did an inpatient program, which is in the jail. And my husband got put out to Serenity House in Ogden, which was an inpatient program. And I went to jail. And my charges were such that they were felonies. And I was given a prison sentence of 2 5-year sentences at the Women's Utah State Penitentiary. And I told that judge, she said, bailiff, take her to jail. And I looked at him and I said, you can't send me to jail. Don't you know who I am? And he said, bailiff, bring her back up here. And I thought, well, he does know who I am. The ego is a quite interesting place for an alcoholic addict. So he brought me back up and he said, Miss Stafford, you do protest. And I said, of course I protest. I had a perfectly good job before I got in here. And you give me these fines and all this time in prison, how am I supposed to pay my fines? And he said, well, I'll tell you what. If you can find a job from jail, I won't send you out to the prison. And I said, perfect. And so I go back to the tier, and I tell the women, of course, bolstering my story, he does know who I am. I don't have to go to prison, and I got to find a jail. I got to find a job from jail. And this gal said, well, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I had a perfectly good job before I got here. I'm going to ask for mine back. So I wrote a letter to Microsoft, and I told them what had happened, and I asked them for my job back. And one day, I spent about 6 months in Davis County, and finally the human resource director responded, and one day the bailiff said, Stafford, roll them up. And I said, where am I going? And he said, you got out. And so I went next door to the library, and I used the phone, and I called the court, and I said, why did you let me out of jail? He said, the clerk said, you wrote a letter to your human resource manager out at Microsoft, and it just so happened that the human resource manager used to be the bailiff for Judge Dawson.
Oh, no.
Who was my judge. And he gave you a stunning review as an employee and said that he would take you back, and that he would send monthly reports to the court, and that if you didn't follow through, that he would have the judge send me back to jail. So, little miracles happened along the way that I didn't know were miracles because I just felt so entitled. But that was my path to finally, getting stopped. I would go to jail with my inpatient intervention program, and my husband went to an outpatient program in Ogden. And of course, the story never ends where it ends. My husband got out of inpatient, and he was able to stay sober for 2 years. But when I got out of jail, I had to test the waters again, and I would use one more time. I just wasn't done yet. And as a result, my probation officer was notified, and he told me, you better get to treatment or you are going to prison. And so I went to treatment, and I went to day spring. And as a result of having a job, having insurance, I could afford to go to treatment. And, that was my path to my start of recovery. And that was, I remember when I went into the treatment center, and that was March 11th of 2000.
Wow.
Saved my life, saved my life. Because I'm sure I would have kept doing what I was doing. And my husband would, get and stay sober. And so that's how I got to the place where I was told that I would go to treatment and get sober. But it saved my life. It really saved my life.
And the alternative was go to treatment or go to prison, and you were smart enough to know which one you wanted.
Well, my mom always said, Marsha's the smart one. And they still tell me that today. Marsha's the smart one. I'm like, I'm too smart for my own good. So, yeah, that was my path to getting sober. And thank goodness.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm curious, Marsha, because...
I'm going to interrupt for a minute, because nobody in my family at that time was sober. And so as a result of my getting sober, over 21 years, I've been able to watch, my family get sober. And I truly believe it was because they saw that was possible. I didn't do anything for them or to them. But, alcoholism runs its course sooner or later.
It's kind of rough. And I listened to your story and listened to you talk about this just deep culture of drinking and alcohol. And then I'm thinking about you going to treatment, and I'm imagining that you have a lot of coping skills to try on and try and figure out what works for you and how you are going to live a different lifestyle entirely. Can you talk about that journey a little bit? Because I imagine that was not a simple thing.
I was raised up in Holiday Inn, and so I had corporate skills, and that's different than having social skills. And I could not go back to work in the field. So when I got out and in recovery, I could not go back to the field that I had worked in for 25 years. And so I had to completely, I had to go into another field. And treatment helped me to learn about what a wild animal I was most of my life. I was corporate trained, so I knew how to behave in corporate America. But socially, I was awkward, and I used to only hang out with people who drank and used like I did. And I was fortunate. I went to Alcoholics Anonymous, and in Alcoholics Anonymous, the treatment told me I had to go. I was not such a volunteer. My grandpa was sober in Alcoholics Anonymous, my mother's father, for 30 years. And when I was a little girl, my mom used to drop me off their house every now and then. And he would talk about AA all the time. And so when I got to AA, I thought, oh my God, I've been sentenced to do. And, but I walked into the Alamo Club in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I saw the Serenity Prayer on the wall. And my grandpa used to have that hanging up over his dining room table. And I knew that I was someplace that I was supposed to be. And my next thought was, how did my grandpa know that I would need to be here? Because I still had no understanding of alcoholism. And of course, it was real important in my recovery to learn about what alcoholism was. And to, working with a sponsor, I got a sponsor, and that sponsor took me through the steps. She was teaching me how to be a lady, because I didn't know how to be a lady. I knew how to be a woman that was a drunk, that was a competitive drinker with men. I talked like a pirate, except when I was in corporate America. I had lived a double life for a long, long time. And so working the steps and working with women in recovery, it was painful. My first 4 years of my recovery, I cried. I cried because I was grieving the loss of the woman that I was, and I didn't know about the woman that I was becoming. And the woman that I was becoming scared me to death. And of course, my husband is going through the same thing as I was, except he had a different kind of a childhood being raised up. So it was painful for me to let go of this wild child girl that I was. And at about 4 years sober, I was working at a treatment center. And I was still working at Microsoft, but I was working part-time at a treatment center. I had a drug dealer that got out of prison, and he was going to treatment at this facility, and he needed a ride to group. So he would ask me for rides, and I was giving him rides to group. And rather than leave and come back and get him, I would wait there. And the lady, her name was Bonnie, she was doing the group. She says, hey, you leave him here every week. How about, we give you a part-time job here? And I said, okay, that's good. There are people in recovery. That sounds safe. So I started working for this little treatment center called ABC, Alternative Behavioral Consultants. And as a result of working there, the owner started seeing that there was something in me that I didn't see in myself. And he was doing an anger management class one day, and I was checking people in. And at lunch, the people came in, and they were sitting in the lobby, and I just started processing them for anger management. And he was sitting there, and afterwards he says, I want you to teach anger management for me. Where did you learn that? And I said, Holiday Inn teaches you a lot of anger management because you deal with a lot of people in the hospitality business. And so he says, I think you should go to school to become a counselor. Do you want to do that? And I said, well, I never even thought about that. And he goes, how about I pay you to go to school? It was another God shot, Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
That was anything that I wanted to do. And I said, you know what? That sounds like a great idea. He paid me to go to the University of Utah to become a substance use disorder counselor. And I'll be forever, ever grateful because he did see in me, something I couldn't see in myself. And I went with it. I didn't know what I was doing in sobriety enough that I wasn't, I didn't have any intelligence there. So I just went with what other people told me to do. And it worked for me. And, today I'm so grateful that I did that. Because I would be given the gift of being able to turn around and take this life that was such a horrid thing for me at the time. But through recovery, I learned that, God was present through all of that. I can't get through this without saying God was doing for me what I could not do for myself. And through people teaching me in the program about recovery, going to school to learn to be a counselor, people having faith in me. I mean, this guy at ABC gave me the keys to his location and let me handle money. And, I had done some real criminal behavior when I was using. And, restoration, redemption was happening for me. And, I started working with other women in recovery. And my life just started growing exponentially. It's a journey that I wouldn't miss for anything. for anything.
Wow, that's incredible. And I mean, I'm listening to you talk about these pivotal moments in your life of here you're heading to California and you get pulled over and you go to jail and you have an opportunity there to turn things around and then he offers to send you to school. Like, who does that, right? That doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, it's a God shot. And, I would go to school and I would come back and I would work at his facility. And one day his facility wasn't doing so well. And I was also working in the courts as a probation officer. And I started working at another facility. It was called NEFA, No Excuse for Abuse. And I would do my internship there from the University of Utah. And she took me on as a counselor once I became a counselor. Took me 4 years to get my license because I did not have a bachelor's degree. So I had to work 4,000 hours in the field. And so when I was sober about 6 years, I got my license to be a substance use disorder counselor. And I was a probation officer. And it was at that time that I started. She asked me, Kathy with the NEFA, I want to open a facility in Tooele. Will you help me do that? And I said, of course I will. And so I went out, and I had gone through licensing with the ABC company. So I knew about licensing, and I said, I'm just going to go open that for you. And I started documenting and putting together what today is part of my company, which is New You Recovery Business Consulting, with a product called Treatment Center in a Box. And she allowed me to open that treatment center, and I opened another one in Ogden for her. I've opened, Shelley, God gave me a treatment center in a box so I could put things together. I couldn't have told you, if somebody had told you that I do today what I do today when I first got sober, I'd run for the hills. Because I just didn't have self-esteem or self-confidence or self-worth, but through God I have all of those things. And, watching women that are brave go before me do what they do, I started trusting and having confidence in God, and God will give you your assignments, I call them. He's given me my assignments, and as a result of following his lead and being obedient to that to the best of my ability, I've opened, I'm on my 39th facility, ranging from social detox to residential to outpatient to sober living houses. I'm the president of the Alano Club, and I'm in the process of organizing and refining their system so I can also open Alano Clubs wherever the need may be. And the fear of what's going to come next has left me because when I serve God, he's a great employer. And the next gig comes. And it's just been an amazing, amazing ride. And, today I just opened I'm in the process of opening my first out-of-state facility in Minnesota. And I couldn't have told you that was going to happen, but somebody else did that for me. A treatment center that I had opened down in St. George said, I want to replicate what you did for me, and I want to make it a franchise. And he said, when I franchised my model, I franchised you. And he's now selling the franchise. I didn't do anything. He sells the franchises, and I get the business. And I'm like, man, thank you so much. Thank you, God, for doing that for me. And so he calls and says, I've sold a franchise in San Diego. Go out there and get it set up. And, I could not. I wouldn't take a drink today if it was to save my mother, and she's 90 years old. I would not do that because my mom's, life is in God's hands. And so is mine. Today I cannot think of one good reason to drink. Because I've got 1,000 bazillion reasons to stay soft. And it's just an amazing, amazing journey. Yeah.
Wow, Marsha, that's an incredible story. And I love the way you bring it full circle to now you're able to give back and engage in this very community that gave to you and make a difference. And I will say that I have worked with you enough to know that you are incredibly detail oriented and that you know the documentation backwards and forwards, which in my line of work makes my job so much easier. When you set up a facility the right way and they can do it the right way, the revenue works better, the authorizations work better, everything is better when Marsha's hands have been on it.
And God gave me the gift of organization. I got to learn what are some of my gifts and what are some of my abilities. And people depend on me to organize things today. And, I'm fortunate. I organized the Women's Big Book Retreat. I've been doing that for 19 years. And I organize treatment centers and help them keep their functionality going so that they can do what they need to do, which is work with and treat the clients. And, that's where you do what you do, Shelley, with the billing company. That you take that burden from them. And we teach them how to do the things that we do, what they don't need to be doing. They know of them, but it keeps them focused on what they really open treatment centers for, which is to be present with the client. And that's been one thing I think my clients appreciate most about it, is they can trust me. They know it's set up and it's done right. And that's just, I learned that that's one of my abilities, is organizing, and people depend on me for that. And that's a good deal because, I was a kid that grew up in chaos and unorganization. And to be able to have that come full circle and be able to use it as a gift is amazing.
Wow.
And the story's not over yet. I don't know what the future will bring for me, but I did start a nonprofit company. I can't leave you without talking about my nonprofit, New You Recovery Incorporated, and I was able to go and travel to Nepal and climb the Island Peak. It's one of the third. It's next to Nepal as being the largest. It's 2,695. And, I was able to climb Island Peak, and we climbed 3 of the highest peaks in Nepal. And I was never a climber. I didn't know how to do that. But as a result of going to Nepal, I started my nonprofit, and I said I want to be able to do what I do in the United States in Nepal. And so I helped to organize and set up treatment facilities in a third world country that had no idea about what treatment was. And it's just been amazing to be able to go to Nepal and be part of. We've opened a Christian treatment center, a women's treatment center, a men's all treatment center, and I get to carry the gospel over there. And it's just amazing. I stay sober because I don't know what miracles God's got for me next. Yeah, I quit when the gig's going really good.
It sounds like it's going fantastic. And I really think we've got to credit, a lot of your tenacity and willingness to just put in the effort and figure it out, right? And that trust, I can hear you really have that trust in God that He's got a plan for you. And if you stick with it, it'll show up.
Yeah. And, bigger than anything I could ever dream. People say, what is your dreams? Well, my dream and my hope is just to keep doing what I do, and it'll unfold as God needs it to. And I don't know what that is. I try to stay out of His way. Because when I get in the way, it changes the course of action. And, I have a radio show. It's called the Been There, Done That show. And I started that in December of 2012. And I don't do it so frequently anymore. I do it when a show comes, to me. But I've been able to, have a voice in recovery. And that's been one of my motivating, find your motivation in recovery. Find what your gifts are, and then, shout them from the mountaintops and get busy sharing them with others, because, the world was waiting on me, Shelley. I had somebody tell me that once.
Uh-huh.
Why are you wasting your time? Why are you wasting your gifts? The world is waiting for you. newcomers, the world is waiting for you, waiting for your gifts to have you share them with us in the world, because, God don't make no crap, and he don't make no junk. There's purpose for everybody. And a lot of times, sobriety is about finding your purpose. And when you can find your purpose and connect with it, man, all doors, the world is your oyster. There's nothing I can't do. There's nothing.
Yeah, and that's certainly been the case. And, for you, Marsha, is that the doors seem to be wide open and you're getting to do the things that you're passionate about and that you love, and that just really fill your life with happiness and joy.
And, the best work I do is the work I do for free, Shelley. God keeps my bills paid with what I do, but the best work that I do is the work that I do for free. And being able to give it, in order for me to keep what I have to give it away. And I'm just so thankful for the opportunity that you have given me today. I'm humbled, to be able to share my story. Because I never know how it's going to come out, you know what I mean? And what I've learned is that it comes out exactly the way God needs it for whoever's going to listen to your podcast. And I'm just so thankful that you gave me the opportunity to be able to share that. And that I can help somebody out there today if they're struggling. You can call me. My phone number is area code 801-574-8765. You can find me on the BeenThereDoneThatShow.com website. You can reach out there. There's stories of recovery and healing on that site. And, if you just need somebody to go to talk to and say, hey, how do you think I can get what you got? We'll sit down and talk about what's, going on for you. Because this is a gift that's given for free. So thank you so much.
Oh, Marsha, thank you. The pleasure and honor is really mine and the listeners to hear your story and to hear your enthusiasm. And to hear how you've turned your life, to a completely different direction that is just full of service and love and that you really get what it's all about. So thank you for being willing to share that with us and sharing how people can get a hold of you. And I would really, really love for you to come and be on the show again so we can hear the rest of the story. And one other thing is, thank you for joining us during a time that you're grieving with your family. You're back in Albuquerque with your family. You've just lost your brother, and you were really willing to be vulnerable and come on and share your story anyway. And I want to thank you for that, because that wasn't expected.
Oh, thank you. We are celebrating my brother today. We don't mourn the way we used to. We celebrate a life given, and now we know that he's whole. And it's us who are here, and so we support each other. And I couldn't think of a better or more wonderful thing that I would want to be doing today. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Marsha. Thanks for being with us, and definitely going to have you on the show again.
Oh, thank you, Shelley. Have a great day. I like to say be a great day, because you're responsible how your day turns out.
That is absolutely true. Thanks for leaving us with those words of wisdom.